He never won a single fight. Not one. He couldn't swing a sword properly. He panicked under pressure, and by the end of his journey, his body was so broken that a warm summer day would ache in his shoulder for the rest of his life. And yet, out of everyone who marched, who bled, who commanded armies, it was him. The one nobody trained for war. The one who was supposed to stay home. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how a hobbit with no combat skill ended up carrying the single most dangerous object in the entire history of Middle-earth, why the strongest warriors alive couldn't be trusted to touch it, and what it actually cost him to finish the job. Because the ending isn't what most people think it is. The real story is much darker than the movies let on. Before the Shire existed. To understand why Frodo Baggins mattered at all, you have to go back roughly 12,000 years, to a time before hobbits, before men, before the Shire had grass growing on it. The world was shaped by divine beings called the Aenir, under a single creator. One of them, a being of immense power named Melkor, wanted his own will to dominate everything else. That pride cracked the harmony of creation, and the world that followed was never fully whole again. Melkor was later renamed Morgoth, and he spent ages corrupting the world he helped build. Serving him was a lesser but still terrifyingly powerful spirit named Sauron. Brilliant, meticulous, obsessed with order and control. When Morgoth was finally defeated at the end of the First Age, Sauron went quiet. He waited. In the Second Age, Sauron rebuilt himself in secret, appearing to the elves in a fair disguise and offering to help them craft rings of power. Together they forged 16 rings, 3 for the elves, 7 for the dwarves, 9 for men. But Sauron forged one more in total secrecy, inside the fire of Mount Doom, pouring most of his own power into it, one ring to bind all the others. The instant he put it on, the elves felt his mind pressing into theirs and tore their rings off. War followed. Centuries later, an island civilization of men called Numenor was destroyed after their king was manipulated by a captured Sauron into defying the powers that be. The island sank beneath the sea, and Sauron's physical body was destroyed with it. But his spirit survived, because the ring survived. As long as the ring existed, Sauron could be weakened, even reduced to a shadow with no body, but never fully erased. Sauron rebuilt himself again and attacked the surviving kingdoms of men, leading to the last alliance of elves and men, which ended with Sauron killed in single combat, though it cost both of the alliance's kings their lives. The son of one of them, Isildur, cut the ring straight off Sauron's hand with his father's broken sword. This is the single most important decision in the entire timeline. Isildur had the chance to march the ring into Mount Doom and end Sauron completely. Instead, he kept it, telling himself he'd decide what to do with it later. He never got the chance. He was ambushed at a river crossing, the ring slipped off his finger, and he was killed moments later. The ring sank into the riverbed and vanished for over 2,000 years. That single moment of pride is the reason the entire Third Age would eventually collapse onto the shoulders of a hobbit who wasn't even born yet. A small life in a small place. Skip forward roughly 2,500 years. The ring has been lost in a riverbed for centuries until a creature named Smeagol finds it on a fishing trip with his cousin and strangles his cousin over it almost immediately. He disappears into the mountains with it for 500 years, slowly transforming into the twisted, crawling thing eventually known as Gollum. Meanwhile, a peaceful farming community called the Shire has quietly existed for generations, populated by hobbits, small, unassuming people who care more about second breakfast and gardening than kings or distant wars. What hobbits are gifted at is being overlooked, which turns out to matter more than anyone could have guessed. Frodo Baggins is born into this world in the year 2968 of the Third Age, orphaned young when his parents drown in a boating accident. He's raised by relatives until his older cousin, the wealthy and eccentric Bilbo Baggins, adopts him as his heir. Bilbo had gone on a strange adventure decades earlier and come back with treasure, a magic sword, and one small golden ring he never talked about. That quiet life shatters at Bilbo's 111th birthday party in the year 3001. In front of the gathered Shire, Bilbo gives a strange speech and simply vanishes. He'd slipped the golden ring onto his finger, using its power of invisibility to disappear from his own party before leaving the Shire for good, handing Bag End and everything in it, including the ring, to Frodo. Nobody in that room understood what had just happened. What they didn't know is that the small golden ring now sitting in Frodo's pocket was the single most dangerous object left in existence, the exact ring Isildur had refused to destroy 3,000 years earlier. The wizard who suspected too much. Bilbo leaves, and life in the Shire mostly goes back to normal, for about 17 years. But an old friend of Bilbo's, a wandering wizard named Gandalf, never quite let go of his suspicion about that ring. Something about it had bothered him since Bilbo first described how he'd found it, deep underground from a creature obsessed with calling it my precious. Gandalf spends years researching, eventually tracking down the only living witness who might know the truth, Gollum himself. What he learns from that interrogation terrifies him enough to ride straight to the Shire. He tests the ring by throwing it into Frodo's fireplace. The metal doesn't melt, but the heat activates an inscription hidden on its surface, written in the language of Mordor. Gandalf translates it and confirms what he's feared. This is Sauron's ring. The one everyone thought lost forever at the bottom of a river had been sitting in Bilbo's pocket, then Frodo's, this entire time. Worse, Gollum, under torture in Mordor, had given up 2 words before escaping. Shire. Baggins. Sauron now knew exactly where to look. Gandalf tells Frodo he has to leave immediately. Frodo, a hobbit who's never left his own homeland for anything more dangerous than a picnic, is told he has to carry the most sought-after object in existence across hundreds of miles of open country, while an enemy who has existed since before recorded history actively hunts for it. The Black Riders. Frodo doesn't leave alone. His gardener and closest friend Samwise Gamgee, Sam, insists on coming out of sheer loyalty. 2 more hobbits, his cousins Merry and Pippin, tag along too. What none of them are prepared for is what's already hunting them. Sauron sends 9 servants, men who, centuries earlier, had accepted rings of power from him and slowly became wraiths, undead shadows bound to his will. These are the Nazgul, the ring wraiths, terrifying not because they're fast or strong, but because of the effect their presence has on the living. Animals bolt from them. Grown men freeze in place. The hobbits nearly run straight into one on their first night on the road, hiding under tree roots while a black-cloaked rider sniffs the air just feet away. They pick up a companion, a weathered ranger going by the name Strider, who turns out to be Aragorn, heir to a lost human kingdom, and who agrees to guide them toward the elfish refuge of Rivendell. It's a decision that saves their lives more than once, because the Black Riders don't stop hunting. They catch up to the group at an old ruined watchtower called Weathertop at night with almost no way to fight back. The wound that never fully healed. This is the part of Frodo's story that gets softened in adaptations, and it shouldn't be because this is where everything changes for him permanently. At Weathertop, 5 of the 9 ring wraiths corner the group. Aragorn fights back with fire, one of the only things that unsettles them. But in the chaos, Frodo, feeling an almost magnetic pull from the ring itself, slips it onto his finger. He crosses into the Wraith world, a dim, colorless dimension where the Nazgul are fully visible in their true forms, and where Frodo is now visible to them too. The leader of the Nazgul, the Witch King of Angmar, stabs Frodo in the shoulder with a Morgul blade, a weapon forged to break off a tip of cursed metal inside the wound and slowly work it toward the heart, turning the victim into a wraith over time. Frodo survives because Aragorn drives the riders off, but the wound doesn't heal like a normal one. It grows colder, not warmer. Frodo grows paler, weaker, numb on one side, losing his grip on reality as the shard works through him. By the time the group reaches Rivendell, after a desperate river crossing where Frodo is almost dragged fully into the Wraith world by all 9 riders at once, he's hours from becoming one of them permanently. Elrond removes the shard just in time, but he's blunt about what this means. Frodo will carry a version of this wound for life. On the anniversary of that night, every year afterward, the old injury flares up again, a quiet reminder that some damage doesn't go away just because the story moves on. And that's just the first major wound. It's not close to the last. a room full of kings and wizards, and one very small hobbit. Once Frodo recovers enough to stand, Elrond calls together a council in Rivendell, a historic gathering of representatives from every major group still fighting Sauron. Elves, dwarves, men, and wizards. Aragorn is there, revealed publicly for the first time as the last heir of the ancient line of kings. Boromir arrives representing Gondor. Legolas represents the elves of Mirkwood. Gimli represents the dwarves. The council debates what to do with the ring now that its location is confirmed. Boromir argues fiercely that a weapon this powerful shouldn't be thrown away. It should be used against Sauron instead. It's the exact same trap that destroyed everyone who tried it before, going back to Isildur. Gandalf and Elrond shut it down. The ring cannot be controlled, only obeyed. It has to be destroyed in the same fire it was made in. Someone has to carry it there. In a room full of kings and legendary fighters, it's Frodo, the smallest, least battle-ready person present, who quietly volunteers. Everyone else understood something Frodo hadn't fully processed yet. The ring corrupts based on power and ambition, and a hobbit with almost none of either was, paradoxically, the safest option to carry it. A fellowship of 9 is formed to accompany him. Frodo, Sam, Merry, Pippin, Gandalf, Aragorn, Boromir, Legolas, and Gimli. 9 walkers, chosen to match the 9 riders hunting them. They didn't stay together for very long. The Bridge and the Fall. The Fellowship's route takes them through the ancient dwarven mines of Moria, a once glorious underground kingdom now infested with orcs, after the dwarves who lived there disturbed something far worse in the depths below, an ancient demon of fire and shadow known as a Balrog. Ambushed by orcs deep inside the mine, the group flees toward the exit as the Balrog appears, forcing them across a narrow stone bridge. Gandalf turns to face it alone and shatters the stone beneath the creature's feet. It's not enough. As the Balrog falls, its whip catches Gandalf by the ankle and drags him down into the abyss. The Fellowship watches their guide disappear into the dark and is forced to keep running without him, grieving in real time while orcs are still chasing them out of the mountain. For Frodo, it's the second time in weeks that death has brushed directly past him. First, his own near transformation into a wraith, now the loss of a person most equipped to protect him. What's coming is about to get much more personal. The Elf Queen's Mirror. The surviving Fellowship make their way to Lothlorien, a hidden elvish forest kingdom ruled by Galadriel, one of the oldest and most powerful elves still living in Middle-earth. Galadriel offers Frodo a look into a magical basin, a mirror showing visions of the past, present, and possible futures. The Shire burning, Gandalf falling, events that may or may not come to pass. There are futures where he fails. There are futures where everyone he loves suffers for it. Then Frodo, overwhelmed by what he's carrying, offers the ring to Galadriel directly, telling her to take it if she wants it. For a brief moment, she considers it, describing what she would become. Not evil in appearance, but powerful and terrible all the same, wearing a fairer face. Then she refuses, choosing to remain herself. It's easy to overlook, but it's one of the only moments in the journey where someone with real power is offered the ring directly and says no. Everyone else who ends up near it either wants it or starts wanting it. The Fellowship leaves Lothlorien with gifts and boats, heading down the river toward the borders of Gondor. It's the last calm moment they get. Betrayal at Amon Hen. As the group approaches the falls of Amon Hen, the pressure that's been building around the ring finally boils over. Not from an enemy outside the group, but from within it. Boromir, the same man who'd argued back in Rivendell that the ring should be used as a weapon, finds Frodo alone in the woods and tries to convince him to bring it to Gondor instead of Mordor. When Frodo refuses, Boromir's pleading turns desperate, then aggressive, and he lunges at Frodo, trying to physically take the ring off him. It's the first time another member of the Fellowship turns against Frodo directly. Frodo escapes only by slipping the ring onto his finger and vanishing, terrified by what the attack confirms. The ring doesn't just tempt distant enemies, it corrupts the people standing right next to him too. Boromir realizes what he's done almost immediately and is overcome with guilt, but the damage to the group's trust is done. Sitting alone by the river, Frodo decides he cannot let anyone else near the ring anymore, and leaves the Fellowship to continue toward Mordor by himself. Sam, refusing to be left behind again, nearly drowns trying to follow him across the water, and Frodo pulls him into the boat. From this point forward, it's the two of them. Boromir, meanwhile, dies defending Merry and Pippin from an orc raid just afterward, redeeming himself in his final moments, but confirming in the worst possible way that even good men break under the ring's influence when it gets close enough. Two hobbits and a monster with two minds. Frodo and Sam continue on foot across increasingly hostile terrain, and it's here that Gollum, the same creature who'd carried the ring for 500 years and lost it to Bilbo decades earlier, catches up to them, drawn by an obsession with the ring that never faded. Frodo, remembering something Gandalf told him back in the Shire, that even a creature this twisted deserved a chance at mercy, spares Gollum's life and forces him, under an oath sworn on the ring itself, to guide them toward Mordor. What follows is one of the strangest relationships in the entire story. Gollum is a divided creature. Smeagol, the timid remnant of the hobbit-like creature he used to be, and Gollum, the possessive side shaped by 5 centuries of the ring's influence. Frodo's kindness genuinely starts to reach the Smeagol side, and there are stretches where Gollum seems almost loyal, catching food for them, guiding them along paths Sam never would have found alone. Sam never trusts him, not for a second, creating a quiet tension between the two hobbits. Frodo increasingly sympathetic to Gollum's suffering. Sam certain that sympathy is going to get them killed. Both of them, in their own way, turn out to be right. Because Gollum's loyalty was never actually solid, and where he leads them next is the closest either hobbit comes to dying before they even reach Mordor's gates. The Spider in the Dark. Gollum leads Frodo and Sam to a pass called Cirith Ungol, claiming it's a secret way into Mordor that avoids the heavily guarded main gates. What he doesn't tell them is what's waiting inside. An ancient, monstrous spider named Shelob, a creature Gollum himself used to worship and feed in exchange for safe passage. His plan, driven by the side of him that never stopped wanting the ring for himself, is to let Shelob kill the hobbits and take the ring off whichever corpse still had it attached. Inside the tunnel, in complete darkness, Shelob ambushes them. Sam fights her off using a small vial of light given to them by Galadriel, one of the few things that actually hurts her, but not before Shelob stings Frodo, paralyzing him with venom that leaves him appearing dead. Sam, believing his closest friend has died right in front of him, faces an impossible decision: continue the mission alone with the ring, or stay with the body. He chooses to take the ring and continue, only to overhear orcs discovering Frodo moments later and realizing he isn't dead at all, only paralyzed, and now being taken prisoner into the Tower of Cirith Ungol. The rescue nobody expected. What happens next is genuinely one of the most intense stretches of the entire journey. Sam, alone and exhausted, has to sneak into an enemy fortress crawling with orcs to rescue his best friend. Inside the tower, Frodo is stripped, interrogated, and left in a cell while the orcs guarding him turn on each other over his belongings. A brutal internal fight that kills almost every orc in the tower before Sam even has to fight his way in. Sam finds Frodo alive, but shaken and deeply disoriented. There's a moment here that's easy to miss, but says a lot about what this journey has already cost Frodo mentally. When Sam reveals he still has the ring safe, instead of relief, Frodo's first reaction is a flash of suspicion, briefly accusing Sam of trying to steal it before catching himself and apologizing. It's the clearest sign yet that the ring is actively reshaping how Frodo thinks, even about the one person who has done nothing but protect him. They escape disguised in stolen orc gear and step into the open wasteland of Mordor. What's left of the journey isn't about fighting anymore, it's whether two exhausted hobbits can physically survive long enough to finish what they started. The long walk through ash. The final stretch across Mordor toward Mount Doom is the most physically brutal part of the entire journey. There's no food to speak of, water is scarce and foul, and the air is thick with ash from the volcano they're heading toward. Frodo grows weaker by the day, the ring around his neck becoming heavier the closer they get, almost as though it's resisting its own destruction. At one point, Frodo simply cannot walk any further, and Sam, who has spent the entire journey as the supporting character in his own mind, always following Frodo's lead, makes the decision to carry him. He hoists Frodo onto his back and carries him the rest of the way up the mountain, because he can't carry the ring for him, but he can carry everything else. Frodo was never chosen because he was strong, he was chosen because he could endure, and even that endurance eventually runs out. What gets him to the end is Sam, quite literally refusing to let him fall. They reach the cracks of doom, the exact spot where the ring was originally forged, the only place capable of unmaking it. The moment nobody expects. Here's the part that surprises people who've only seen the films casually because it gets softened in adaptation, but the original account is clear about what happens. Frodo, standing at the edge of the fire holding the ring, does not throw it in. After thousands of miles, after nearly becoming a wraith, after being stabbed, poisoned, captured, and starved, the single largest concentration of willpower demanded by this journey finally breaks him at the last possible second. He puts the ring on his own finger instead, declares it his, and vanishes from sight, claiming the very thing he spent months trying to destroy. It isn't written as weakness in the way people usually mean that word, it's written as an almost inevitable outcome, proof the ring's corruption was never something willpower alone could resist forever. Frodo succeeded at the impossible task of getting the ring to the one place it could be destroyed. He failed at the final, smallest step of letting it go. This is exactly where Gollum, who had been trailing them the entire way through Mordor, reappears one last time. He attacks Frodo, bites off the finger the ring is on, and in his frenzied celebration of having his precious back, stumbles over the edge of the cliff and falls into the fire below, taking the ring and himself down with him. The ring is destroyed not because Frodo willingly threw it in, but because of an act of mercy he showed weeks earlier, sparing a creature everyone else wanted him to kill. If Frodo had listened to Sam's early instincts, there would have been nobody left to finish the job at the final moment. The single kindest decision of the journey is the exact reason the mission succeeds at all. Sauron, whose entire remaining existence was tied to that ring, is unmade the instant it's destroyed. His armies collapse, his fortresses crumble, the war ends within moments of that fire closing over the ring forever. Going home without really arriving. Frodo and Sam are rescued from the collapsing mountain by eagles sent by Gandalf, who, as it turns out, didn't actually die in Moria after all. There's a joyful reunion, a coronation for Aragorn as the returning king, and by every measure, the story should end here on a triumphant note. For Frodo, it doesn't. Not really. When the hobbits return to the Shire, they find it's been quietly taken over in their absence by a corrupted version of the wizard Saruman, turned to petty tyranny over the one peaceful place untouched by the larger conflict. Frodo, Sam, Merry, and Pippin, now hardened by everything they'd survived, lead the Shire's own hobbits in taking their home back, in a final conflict known as the Scouring of the Shire. Even in this fight, on his own home turf, Frodo largely refuses to kill, urging mercy even for Saruman when the wizard is finally cornered. By this point, it's clear Frodo's arc was never really about becoming a warrior. He remains until the very end someone who values sparing lives over taking them. The Shire is saved. Life slowly returns to normal for everyone else. Sam marries, has children, becomes mayor. Merry and Pippin grow into respected figures. And Frodo, the one who actually carried the ring the entire way, quietly falls apart. The wound that doesn't close. This is the part of Frodo's story that tends to get skipped over the fastest, and it's arguably the most important part of understanding who he actually was. The wounds Frodo carries never fully heal. The old injury from Weathertop returns every year on its anniversary, along with the memory of nearly becoming a wraith. The bite from Shelob left lasting damage. Beyond the physical scars, something quieter settled into him. A persistent heaviness, a sense of being permanently changed by carrying something that corrupts everyone who touches it long enough, even the one person strong enough to get it to the fire. Frodo spends years writing down the entire story in what becomes the Red Book, but struggles to find peace in the Shire he fought so hard to save. He tells Sam plainly that some sacrifices are made so that other people get to enjoy the peace, without the person who paid for it getting to enjoy it alongside them. Eventually, Frodo is offered a passage very few mortals in Middle-earth's history were ever given, a place on a ship sailing west to the Undying Lands, where those who carried unbearable burdens could finally find rest. Bilbo goes with them. So does Gandalf. So does Elrond and Galadriel. closing out an era that had lasted for thousands of years. Sam accompanies Frodo to the Grey Havens, and it's here that Frodo says something that stuck with readers for decades. That he didn't save the Shire so he could enjoy it, but so that others could. Sam and the rest of the Shire get to keep the peace. Frodo, the one who paid for it, has to leave in order to ever truly heal. The ship sails, and Frodo Baggins, the hobbit who couldn't fight, who never won a single duel, who trembled through most of his own journey, disappears over the horizon, having done something every trained warrior, every powerful wizard, and every ancient king in Middle-earth's history had failed to do before him. He didn't destroy the ring through strength. He got it there through endurance, through mercy toward a creature everyone told him to kill, and through the willingness to keep walking long after his body had nothing left to give. In the end, that turned out to be exactly what the world needed. Not another warrior, but someone who could carry an unbearable weight all the way to the end, even when the very last step required someone else's hand to finish it. If this kind of deep dive into Middle-earth's history is something you want more of, make sure to like this video and subscribe, because there's a lot more of this world still left to cover.